short video clip just provides teachers with the basics of what the CAPS requirement is for senior phase mathematics. It looks at the time allocated, what the content is, and then what the assessment breakdown should be. The teaching time for mathematics is 4.5 hours per week, and this time is divided into 5 different sections: numbers, operations and relationships, patterns, functions and algebra, space and shape, measurement, and data handling. And in each grade, these content areas are weighted differently. So in grade 7, you'll notice that 30% is spent on numbers, operations and relations, 25% on patterns, functions, algebra, 25% on space and shape, and then 10% on measurement and 10% on data handling. Grade 8 is slightly different. There's a slight switch between numbers, operations and relations and patterns, functions and algebra, where you've got 25% and 30%. In grade 9, once again, the first 3 switch around a little bit, where you've got 30% on space and shape, 35% on patterns, functions, and algebra, and only 15% on numbers, operations, and relations. What we must also remember is that 6 to 12 hours should be allocated to revision and assessment per term. So that's quite a lot of time out of your teaching time. So you've got to make sure that the revision that you do is worthwhile and beneficial to the learners, and that the assessment actually provides good feedback to you and to the learners on where they can improve, which leaves about 150 hours of teaching time that has to be distributed across the content areas. When looking at the content that's covered within each of these sections, under numbers, operations and relationships, you'll notice in grade 7 they look at whole numbers, exponents, integers, common factors and decimal fractions. And if you look at grade 8 and 9, it's exactly the same. Obviously each grade just building on the previous grade's knowledge. In patterns, functions and algebra, once again, the learners in grade 7 look at numeric and geometric patterns, functions and relationships, algebraic expressions, algebraic equations, and then graphs. And they do the same in grade 8 and grade 9, just at a different level, looking at more advanced skills and knowledge. Space and shape, or geometry, they look at 2D and 3D shapes, they look at straight lines, transformation geometry, and then, of course, construction of geometric figures. Once again, building from grade 7 right up to grade 9. In measurement, the only difference in measurement between the different grades is in grade 7 they don't do the theorem of Pythagoras. So grade 7 they'll just look at area and perimeter of 2D shapes and then the surface area and volume of 3D objects. Data handling, same for grade 7, 8 and 9, but just looking at a different and more intense skills in grade 8 and 9 than in grade 7. Now the assessment, or the formal assessment tasks for grades 7, 8 and 9 are the same every year. In term 1, the learners will do an assignment, which counts 50% of the term mark, and a test, which counts 50%. Both of these come from topics covered in term 1. In term 2, there are 3 different tasks. The first is an assignment out of 50 marks, weighted 25%. Another assignment also weighted 25%. Then, of course, you've got your mid-year exam, which is weighted 50%. All 3 of those together make up your term mark. Term 3, again, 3 tasks. A test, which weights 30%, an assignment, which also weights 30%, and then the learners do a project in the third term, which weights 40%. All 3 of those making up the term mark, which then gets converted into a code. In term 4, there's an assignment and an investigation, each forming part of the final mark, but also your end-of-year exam, which has paper 1 and paper 2. And if you have a look at the mark allocation, when the assignment is 50 marks, the investigation is 50 marks, and then of course your end-of-year examination is 200 marks. All 3 of those, or 4 if you count in both the exam papers, add up to the 100% for term 4. Now there's a difference between your term 4 result or mark and your final end of year weighting for your final result. If you're looking at your final result, you're taking marks from term 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is made up of all your continuous assessments. So you've got your 2 tasks in term 1, your 2 tasks in term 2, your 2 tasks in term 3, and then your 2 tasks in term 4. All of that together makes up 40% of your progression and promotion mark. And then your end of year exam makes up 60%. So together that's 100%. And from there the learners get their code, which says whether they progress or promote in mathematics. Now, what should maths teachers be aware of? Well, the first thing is to be aware that the subject of maths is full of content, particularly in the senior phase. And we have to make sure that we're teaching these essential skills and not just the content. The essential skills are really important for the learners to be able to cope in the grades after. Also, remember that you're building on mathematical skills and knowledge that was developed in intermediate phase. So make sure the learners do have this grounding and that you can build on it. And then you've got to make sure that you teach in an enthusiastic way to develop an interest in it, because we want to still keep these learners enthusiastic for their FET years.